Good day, everyone. We are Group 4 of the course of Management Accounting. Our group topic is activity-based costing versus traditional costing. My name is Kang Wei-Eng and my entry number is 278960. I'm here to explain about what is ABC and traditional costing, and also the differences between ABC and traditional costing. Let me start with what is ABC and what I understand about these two systems. ABC stands for activity-based costing. Activity-based costing is a method of cost allocations. It's mostly a manufacturing overhead cost assigned to product based on the activity that causes these costs to be incurred. So these costs are allocated by means of the cost driver, which are the factor costs the activity occurs. As an example, the cost of moving raw material would be allocated by the number of moves rather than by the cost of the material, and then allocating them to the product by using direct labor hours or machine hours. Okay, next is about traditional costing. Traditional costing is a costing method used to allocate overhead costs based on a single cost driver according to the construction of the volume of the production resources. Single cost driver can be based on machine hours, labor hours, and others. In other words, traditional costing system is applying indirect cost to product based on a predetermined overhead rate. Okay, now I continue to explain one of the differences between activity-based costing and traditional costing is about the cost pools. Under traditional costing, cost central used as cost pool and allocate indirect cost to cost object through those cost centers. However, under activity-based costing system, cost centers are not used as cost pool to allocate indirect costs. Instead, activities are used as cost pool. So now based on these two figures, we can know more the difference of the cost pool under these two systems. From the figure under traditional costing, indirect costs are first assigned to cost centers. It can depend on whether a specific indirect cost item can be directly traced to the cost or not. For here, the cost centers include service departments, which provide internal services to other departments, and other one is production department, which directly participate in the production process. After that, the costs accumulated in service department are then reallocated to production departments using the direct method, step-down method, and reciprocal methods. By this time, the indirect costs accumulated in production department include the department owns indirect costs and any indirect costs received from service departments. These indirect costs are then allocated to product by using the allocations rate, then also called absorption rate. Well, based on the figure under activity-based costing, indirect costs are first accumulated in activity cost pool and then allocated to product using activity cost driver rate according to the product requirement for different activity. So compare cost pool between these two systems, we can know the choice of cost pool under activity-based costing is more reasonable because company consume resources as a result of conducting activity instead of having cost centers. For example, consider a company that claims to have a production department but does not conduct any production activities. Under traditional costing, it does not actually incur costs. However, the company will incur costs when the production department conducts product activities, such as handling material, setting up machines, running those machines, and do quality control. So cost pool is one of the more important differences between activity-based costing and traditional costing. I will pass to next presenter. That's all for me. Thank you.
My name is Muhammad Amin Nasuha bin Muhammad Akbar. My number metric is 280134. Here I want to talk about difference between ABC and traditional costing. Traditional costing first. Traditional costing have one plant-wide overhead rate, basically calculate whether using machine hour or labor hour. We just take the total of the overhead rate and divide by the machine hour or the labor hour and give us the one overhead rate. But for the ABC costing, we have multiple activity rate. ABC costing have many cost pool that we calculate based on their cost driver. Means that each cost push must divide by their cost driver. Okay, second for the traditional costing, that is easy to implement. This is because we just take the total for overhead rate for the overhead and divide by their basis. So that's just straightforward. But ABC costing is difficult to implement. This is because the company should have data that show the cost driver. Means that for one of each cost pool must have their cost driver. So the company should have the details. So we can divide the cost pool with their cost driver. If they don't have their data, so this is difficult to their company choose the ABC costing. Okay, for the third one is traditional costing only allocate manufacturing cost. When we talk about the traditional costing, we provide the all manufacturing cost. But for the ABC costing, we allocate manufacturing cost and also non-manufacturing cost. Non-manufacturing cost is like selling and admin expense. Okay, for the fourth one, traditional costing is less accurate. This is because they divide overhead cost by general basis like machine hour or labor hour. We cannot say that all activity are based on machine hour or labor hour. For the ABC costing, is more accurate because they divide the cost pool by their cost driver. Means that okay, example is for the activity electric power. Electric power, their cost driver is kilowatt per hour. Okay, for the material handling, their cost driver is the move of material. Means uh, that's more significant.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Anizulaika binti Sukri and my matric number is 281557. So, I will continue about difference between activity-based costing and traditional costing. So, basically for the traditional costing, they classify costs into variable or fixed costs for the whole production. But for the activity-based costing, they measure the cost based on the activity level. So, there are three types of activity level. There are unit level activities, batch level activities, and the product level activities. So, I will explain first about the traditional costing. So, a variable cost varies in direct proportion to change in the sum measure of volume. For example, the cost of direct material used to manufacture a product is a variable cost. So, doubling the units produced will result in a doubling the cost of direct materials used in the production of used to produce the units. Under the traditional costing, cost behavior classification scheme, any cost that is not classified as the variable cost is considered to be fixed. Of a company's manufacturing cost, direct material and direct labor are typically variable costs. So why direct material and direct labor is a variable cost? Because let's say that for this year, we need more direct material. So so when we add more direct material, we need more hours of the labor. So, but the next year, we need less direct material. So we need to uh, cut the employees' hour. So there is no fix in the direct material and the direct labor. That's why it's considered as the variable cost. A company manufacturing overhead can usually be broken down into portion that is variable and a portion that is fixed. A company's selling and administrative costs can also be broken down into variable and fixed components. For example, the sales commissions typically change in direct proportion to change in a dollar or ringgit Malaysia sales are therefore variable. But the depreciation of a company's delivery equipment typically does not vary any measure of value and therefore classified as a fixed. So the depreciation doesn't influence the production of the company. Next, we move to the activity-based costing in the unit level of activities. So, activity-based costing recognizes the activity that costs the cost. Some activities must be performed for each unit of the product manufactured. For example, the product inspection and testing in a unit-level activity in a personal computer manufacturer that inspect and test all the units. So, the hours of the inspection and the testing will be calculated in the cost of the total product. Costs that incurred in the response to the unit-level activities behave like a variable cost. The same amount of cost must be incurred each time an activity is performed, and the same amount of activity must be performed for each unit of a product manufactured. Therefore, the cost of the unit-level activity changes in the direct proportion to change in the number of units of specific product. So, based on these unit-level activities, the cost will be changed if the number of units of the product change. Next, about the activity-based costing in the batch level activities. So for the batch level activities, the cost of the batch activities vary in the number of the batches, and not the number of units manufactured. It's based on the batch, not the units of the product. So the cost incurred every time a group or a batch of units is produced or a series of steps is performed, like the purchase orders, machine setup, and quality tests are the example of the batch level activities. So in the term of purchase orders, the number of the purchase orders will be calculated in the cost of the product. And for the last part is activity-based costing in the term of product level activities. A product level activities is an action taken in support of the specific product or activity. These actions are taken irrespective of the amount of the production or service volume associated with a product. For example, the cost to design the product, the cost to design the product packaging, and cost to advertise those products. So, for example, the cost to design the product. There are many levels in order to design the product, such as the research and the development part, the prototype, and tooling, and each other. So, this product level activity is based on how we produce those products, the cost we produce the product. So that's all about the difference of activity-based costing and the traditional costing.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Wanur Bila Iza binti Syaiman with metric number 280858. for application of activity-based costing in healthcare service. First of all, to introduce the new costing in healthcare, they use diagnosis-related group system, DRG, that classifies surgeries in categories. Government reimburse hospital with a fixed price based on the classification defined in the RG system without consider the actual cost and actual resource consumption. However, this method shifted substantial cost risk to hospital. So from this we can see that the researcher of the costing method have already tried the RG system where they only consider actual cost in order to calculate the costing of surgery. The method have only effect the substantial of cost risk to the hospital. The researchers have developed a new costing method, and there are 2 case studies developed in Holland and the UK which analyze the representative sample using multi-dimensional approach. They have studied for both traditional cost element and social cost. And the social cost included a low number of working day loss, low hospitalization, less scar, and a low number of convalescence day. And it has benefit the hospital for a long-term benefit that they have analyzed during the questionnaire that they have given to the patient after receive an operation. And some of the benefit are a minor percentage of pain in days after the operation. It will give advantage to the patient in the quality of their life and also on work and their social issue in the general. But all of the study that they developed consists of a low relapse rate and pain and infection in the following month. What the mean of this is that they have conducted an research, and from the research they have conclude that some of the patients have already experienced some advantage after their operation, and they already have some benefit which make them a low effect after surgery so that it won't affect them in their daily life. So even if some of these study face more in-depth clinical and social aspect, they focus only on direct costs, leaving out indirect costs that also influence the final economic impact of this technique. In this research, the costing model aimed at obtaining a full information, consider all indirect costs that is possible and reasonable, taking into account benefit and effort to be sustained to estimate them, such as cost to obtain the information and to manage a more complex model. So from the research that they have done, they only consider the direct cost and not the indirect cost. However, in this cost information, we want to compute a full cost information that also included the indirect cost, because all the indirect costs are also reasonable to conclude, because it also will produce a more successful surgery for patient. Here it comes the application of ABC in the healthcare production. The researcher want to find a technique that used to support economic and managerial consideration about process, and ABC, which is activity-based costing, is the only technique that have managed with both financial and also managerial result. The research in a Finnish hospital in which they simulate the profitability of an enlarged a day surgery unit room and department, and simulate how many change in time and how many change in personal influence the cost of activities and operation were performed by an ABC system. And they conclude by using this ABC system, it will help them to understand the impact of unused capacity in surgery room, which have result that every minute of waiting in the operation room costs over 8 euros per minute. What we can see here, the researcher find out by using this costing, there are more than 8 euros per minute it will cost them if they have a patient that waiting for surgery in the waiting room. In addition, for the advantage of the ABC, this technique are also an instrument helpful in planning. They can effectively support the budgeted management. In fact, ABC information help in assessing resource consumption accurately, allocate resource among organization unit, realizing more detailed variance analysis, and helping in the production of profile capacity usage by comparing available versus utilized level of cost driver. So there are more advantage for the researcher in the hospital if they use the ABC costing method. The hospital managed to assess in more accurate how many costing or how many resource that they have used in order to perform a surgery. All these costs that being used has been allocated to all the department in the hospital as for the surgery unit, and they realize there are more detailed variants if they use this ABC method. Lastly, it will help more in compare utilized level of cost driver compared to the availability cost driver.
The purpose of this journal is to present the use of activity-based costing approach as an alternative to the traditional costing method. Cost estimation is an indispensable component in maintenance services. It has a direct effect on enterprises' economic performance. Overestimation or underestimation of services could lead to the reflected negatively on the business performance. Different cost allocation methods result in different service costs, so selection of the cost allocation method makes the difference. Traditional cost methods apply a workshop-wide allocation method. Unfortunately, those traditional allocation methods do not consider the complexity of the unit to be costed. Ultimately, they do not enable the service provider to render a cheaper job maintenance order for less complex parts or components relative to a complex one of the same system. For example, injectors and pumps of a fuel system of the same vehicle. So they decided to replace it to the activity-based costing method. Maintenance is provided directly to a customer, which means the pricing method should be convincing. So it is important to use a costing method that shows the efforts and real activities performed to execute the required job. Hence, charging a maintenance service necessitates the application of activity-based costing method. Activity-based costing method provides a more accurate cost determination and effective performance evaluation method. On the other hand, the traditional costing method does not focus on the activities that improve the value received by customers. Moreover, it uses unit-level costs, which are variable in relation to change in service volumes such as time consumed to perform the job, while the activity-based costing uses other levels, for example, organizational level costs that are variable for reasons other than changes in service volume. So, activity-based costing system focuses on calculating the cost incurred on performing the activities to manufacture a product or render a service. The activity cost system is a useful means to distribute the overhead cost in proportion to the activities performed in a specific job. So, it provides more accurate service or manufacturing costs estimates because it uses the cost based on the actual activities performed. It also helps the product's designers and service providers to estimate the effects of different production processes and also service methods, respectively, on product or service costs. With that being said, the use of traditional costing method has proven to be distorted by applying overhead uniformly over different jobs of varied complexities and activity scope. Let us look at the cost allocation example. Consider Field Doctor Workshop is specialized in vehicles' fuel injection system. It maintains, tests, and adjusts fuel systems. Field Doctor Workshop maintains two subsystems, that is fuel pump and individual injectors. Overhead allocation using traditional method, that is single workshop wide allocation base. Here we used a cost system that allocates service overhead to units maintained based on the direct labor cost. However, it is worth to mention that allocating the overhead cost to the two fuel systems items equally is unfair for the simple reason that the two items consume unequaled indirect maintenance resources. The maintenance of the injectors is quite simple compared to the fuel pump, which has a relatively complex design, so it is clearly that the maintenance cost of the injectors is quite high. Ultimately, the service provider has to consider that, otherwise, the customer may seek the service of an alternative provider. Using ABC, overhead costs are assigned first to departments, then the department overhead are assigned to the activities. Costs are allocated to the service maintained product based on an allocation rate per cost driver for each individual activity. For the maintenance charge, it used the machine hour, and for material handling, it used process order. Setup hour is to calculate the machine hour used while inspecting, and packaging costs, they allocates from direct labor hours. Lastly, shipping cost is allocated per shipment. Hence, the per unit maintenance cost of the injector decreased, while the cost of the fuel pump increased when compared to the traditional method. So the conclusions of the study show that applying activity-based costing leads to better knowledge and ability to estimate the cost of maintenance jobs.